Raw, real, and just a little dangerous. This is Feral.
We've been having a crazy day. We've been talking about grief. We've been talking about shame. We've been talking about joy. We've been talking about bliss. We've been talking about fun. We've been talking about graphic design. We've been talking about software. And all of this is going to have to take a whole hell of a lot of effort in different ways. And one of the things I heard over and over when I was planning Feral was how tired everybody is. Real talk, just tired. It's part of the reason I made part of the curriculum about rest. But I also understand that sometimes the tiredness is not just physical. Sometimes it's that bone tiredness. It's that world weariness. And in those moments, nothing other than time can sort of get you through it except courage. And I mean, you can't take the musical theater kid out of the musical, you just can't take the musical theater out of me. I'm sorry, you can't. But I keep thinking about, anytime I think about this word, I think about the Wizard of Oz, and I think about the Cowardly Lion when he is coronated and he has decided to be confident finally. And he says, "What turns the lamb into the king? Courage." I'm paraphrasing, right? But what turns the meek into the strong? What turns the this into the that? And the answer to everything is courage. I should have looked it up. But courage, I know, is one of those things where it feels like when I need it, I'm reaching for it. Like Tina said earlier today, you only buy cream of tartar when you need cream of tartar. And one of the things I've learned from you that I think is so incredibly important is that courage can be curated, courage can be summoned, and courage can be an intentional habit. And that once you master those things, that courage can be a gateway back to, or to for the very first time, beautiful things like joy. So I want to thank you for being here to talk about this critical topic. Erin is the author of Joyful AF. If y'all have not read this book, it is outrageous. But rather than us just talk about how dandy joy is, which we will do, go read the book because we're going to get real and we're going to talk about some courage. So, Erin, why courage? Why now?
Why not courage? It's the first thing that comes to mind is why not courage? But I want to even just start with something you just said about rest. This is one of the few things I've said yes to in the last 2 months. I have been on what I've been calling constructive rest. So if you're a theater person, you may have heard the Alexandra technique, and it's this body-based thing. But one of the things they have you do every day is lay on the floor for 20 minutes and get your spine back into alignment. And I've been using that as a metaphor because these are bonkers times. They're bonkers times in business, bonkers times in the economy, bonkers times in the world. And we can't get through it without rest, but we also need the courage to rest because as many of us know, the minute we try to do it, everything goes wonky donk in our nervous systems, right? It's almost like a detox. I got off of social media earlier this year, and it was such a wild ride of coming off of a detox because you have this addiction, right? And now my nervous system is clear, and my nervous system is not getting that that hit of cortisol every day. And now my nervous system doesn't know what to do, right? So I just want to start off with if rest is really on your mind, it really does take courage to stop, to rest, to sit in it longer than feels comfortable.
Yeah. That is so bizarre that rest is uncomfortable.
I wrote in my book, I'm pretty sure I said these exact words in my book. Rest feels like poopy shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Hold on, let me quote you on that.
Rest feels like poopy shit. Because we are unwinding from the hustle and the grind that is baked into our nervous systems. So I want to make this really clear when we talk about courage today, because a lot of times people think about courage as having the gumption to go do something. And sometimes it's the gumption to go do nothing. And especially right now.
Is that your next book, The Gumption to Do Nothing?
God, that's a great one.
Say do you realize what you just said?
I said something else the other day, same thing. Someone needs to capture these. But I think that's really important when we're talking about how people are feeling tired and burnt out by the industries that they're in or the economy. I'm not going to sit here and tell you to go do more. And a lot of the personal development industry will talk about courage in really harmful ways. right? Feel the fear and do it anyway. Go get yourself way out of your comfort zone. That's the only place growth comes. Like it's bullshit. Also, it encourages people to go way past uncomfortable into what I have learned is unsafe. There's a distinction between what's uncomfortable and what's unsafe. And many people in the personal development industry are like, if you're not, they want you in the unsafe territory, right? It's all about do more, do scarier, do bigger. That's not how we do it. That's not how we get through these. That's not how we get through life in general. So
that's not mindful of your nervous system. That's not
no.
mindful of proximity to privilege. That's not mindful to a whole lot of things. I mean, like, we've been really real today. And one of the things that you and I talked about is like, we're not going to hide from talking about any topics that come up. And as a
No.
trans person, like, there are states in our country right now where I would hope you wouldn't have to go. Whether or not you should, I, as someone who loves you, worry about you when you cross borders now. And personal development courage would say cross that border. That's
Sure
not
would.
what we're saying. That's not
Correct.
what we're saying. We're saying Erin's got to protect Erin, and that is courage, whatever that looks like. And if
Yes.
that is Erin's choice to cross the border, then Erin crosses the border courageously. But that's not what courage is, nor is that what someone should be telling you to do.
Fucking-lutely. Right? And I am getting on a plane a week from today to Charlottesville, Virginia, where there are fine people on both sides. And it is a college town and I will be safe. But it is something that I am wildly aware of. I also live in LA where there have been protests and there's questions I have about that. And, you know, again, this is the question. I hear people say, well, I should be doing more politically, right? I wish I had the courage to show up at the protest, or I wish I had the courage to blah, blah, blah. That's just about shaming yourself, right? And that's not courage. That's gritting through shame.
And
Courage
comparison. I wish I could do what they
Yes.
did. And so
Yes.
I am less than. And so I will performatively compare while beating myself up. That's, again, that's just shame. That's not courage.
Right. And this is the right way, right? This is the right way to do things. And you can take that in the political realm. You can take that in the business realm. Everybody has this is how you're supposed to do it. I love it. But I want to reframe this notion on courage, because I think a lot of people have it wrong about what courage looks like in action, what it means to be courageous. Also, courage is not something I feel. I feel fear, right? People are like, I don't feel courageous. Neither do I. People might see me on the outside as courageous, but I'm shaking in my boots. So courage to me is that this is the thing that makes the most sense to me right now. And it feels a little scary and a little uncomfortable. Not a lot unsafe, just a little scary and uncomfortable, and I'm going to do it.
So isn't that it? Like, uncomfortable and natural, right? I talk a lot about that in sales. Like, growth often feels uncomfortable, but it shouldn't violate your safety, truly, right?
Yes.
And like, that's what I tell people all the time about their sales things is like, if you think I sound like an asshole, don't say the thing. If you think I sound like a salesman, then good, you're selling.
Yeah.
Change the language. And I'm not saying take the exact same thing and reframe it from asshole to salesman. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there is a pure, beautiful, courageous way to say something, and you can find a way to do the thing, or you can find an alternate thing, but it takes courage to go, okay, hold on. Let me take stock of where I am and what my goals are and how I'm going to get there as me.
Yes.
Me.
Yes.
Right? Like, that's the courage part, is it has to be of you, aligned with your values and in keeping with your own needs. Like, courage has to be me first. And I think that's so hard for people that are so other centered to be like, well, it can't be me first. But you brought up the protesters in LA. Every single one of them is creating collective action by taking the story personally and taking their time and their lives and making it about that collective action. They're choosing that to give of themselves. So I would say that if that is both selfish and selfless, right? So that is courageous. That is giving of the self. So if I love that you said, I don't experience courage, I experience fear. Right? How do we recognize courage in the wild? How do we recognize it? How do we champion it in others when we see it in real time? And how do we create more of it as a habit?
There's how much time you got?
A lot.
I know. Well, the first thing is it's interesting. Recognizing courage in the wild is not about actually knowing if that person is being courageous. Recognizing courage in the wild is seeing somebody else do something that if you did it, it would feel courageous, right? So if it wouldn't feel courageous for me to show up at the protests, I'm not going to consider what they're doing courageous. And I don't know. Some of those people might look at me and say, what the fuck are you talking about? This isn't courage. This is just what I do. I'm not afraid. I'm here, right? So it makes no sense to go around being like, Annie's courageous, Seth's courageous, that person's courageous. No, that's an action that if I did it, it would feel courageous.
Yes, it would feel if I, right?
Right.
And
Yes.
that's why so many times in the courage professions, like especially during COVID, nurses were like, I'm just doing my job. That's why, like, in a military situation, when people really need the military there and you're like, oh, thank you. They're like, I'm just doing my job. And it's not, there is humility there, but there's also rising to the occasion of what you signed up for. And I think sometimes when you feel like you can't rise to the occasion of what you signed up for whatever reason, that is not a personal failing, when you just got to pick up and do the damn thing, that's the courage.
And I want to say it's courageous in hindsight, right? Because I said, I don't feel courage, I feel fear. So if I see somebody doing it, it's like, oh, if I went and did that afterwards, I would feel courageous. I'd feel scared as fuck doing it, right? But afterwards, I would feel courageous.
Yeah.
But that just, all that comes back to is what's courageous comes home to what's courageous to me, right? What's a fear I have that I want to move through? Not, oh, this is courage as a defined thing. Going to a protest is courage. It's not for everybody, right? Or, doing certain activities in business. I know some people who love being on video and being live and doing all these things. So back in the day, I would have seen, when Facebook Live came out, I thought it was super courageous that I had a colleague that went live every day for over a year. And I talked to her and she's like, I just get online, right? So championing courage is really championing ourselves.
Hold on, I gotta write that down. It is though, because it's finding your way through. It's working through the fear. Like, and when you hear that in the platitudes and everything else, but you are really giving us the guidebook for like feel the fear and do it anyway. Means feel the fear, recognize the next step, recommit to the goal, see if it's still the goal, take the step, realize where you are now, repeat. Like that really is the methodology by the do it anyway, because we're also not saying feel the fear and do it anyway, ignoring the fear. We're like, understand that we think that what is of us is requiring us to work with and through fear. Courage is owning and recognizing the fear.
Yes. And I will say, feel the fear and do it anyway has an asterisk to it, because if you do it and it feels unsafe, pull back. Right. So I, back in the day, went live for 90 days because my coach at the time said, that's what you need to do. I was on the floor anxious every fucking day. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I knew that there was some stuff going on with, I had worked at Facebook in the past and didn't know what they would think of me. I didn't know what my PhD people would think of me becoming a coach. Like there was all this stuff. And rather than going to my coach and saying, this isn't the right challenge, I pushed myself through and continually re-traumatized my nervous system. And what I should have done is said, what would have been the uncomfortable thing, but not unsafe? The uncomfortable thing would have been film a video, send it to 5 friends. Right? So feel the fear and do it anyway is like, don't keep going if you realize that you're still, that the fear is too much. We don't always know.
Anyway, okay, so Erin knows this because Erin's one of my close friends, but like I'm obsessed with Sasquatch. And if I were to encounter a Sasquatch in the wild, I would like to think that I would feel nothing but complete adoration. But they smell like rotting meat and they're gigantic and I'm 5 feet tall. I'm gonna feel some fear. Feel the fear and do it anyway would tell me to hug a Sasquatch. Not even I am woo enough to do that. I would be instantaneously eaten, kidnapped at best, right? So like feel the fear would end my life quite literally. However, have courage to sit down peacefully and see if maybe I wouldn't get eaten while not lunging at the thing might require a little courage, or having the courage to run the fuck away.
That would be what I would be doing.
How courageous, right? So I just think that like this feel the fear bullshit, although well-intentioned, and that's the thing, so much of the stuff we're fed is
well-intentioned, but so harmful.
And it's not one size fits all. Feel the fear and
Yes.
see it anyway. Yes. Okay. I'm afraid to ask that cute person out on a date. Okay. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Sure. I am standing
Yeah.
on the edge of a cliff and I don't think this is a safe way to go. Well, then find a staircase, Boo Bear. Like,
Exactly. And all that comes from you don't always know because something logically might feel safe, but then you go to it and your nervous system was like, nope, actually not. And I really like what Kate is saying here.
yes.
Yeah, what's uncomfortable today might be more comfortable in 3 months. I have this metaphor that I've used with people in the past. It's like you don't walk into a gym for the first time and go lift the 100-pound dumbbell. You'd break your back, right?
Mhm.
You go in and you go, what's the weight right now that I can lift but would tire me out a little bit? And that might be 5 pounds, wherever you at.
Not cause
Lift that until you're like, okay, I can do
we
10,
are. Exactly,
right?
because otherwise we derail ourselves from our goals by not being realistic and claiming that
Right.
that realistic is us not being enough. No,
So,
no, no.
so you got to accept where the thing is. If you do something and you realize, I thought logically that should be fine, but my nervous system is saying no, then the next thing is not to feel shame about where you're at. I should be able to go live for 90 days. What's wrong with me? No. My nervous
No.
system is telling me that I can't go live for 90 days. I don't know why. There's some work to do to understand that, but I'm going to do something different. Great.
Mel Robbins get put on a big old pedestal where we all can, blow air up her behind. And right now there's a lot going on. And I'm not going to enter the Mel Robbins flame war or not flame war either way. But I will say that I'm grateful for one thing that she said, which is some days all you can do is get out of bed and that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed that permission slip when I heard it because I was in the middle of a really freaking deep depression. And that recalibration was important to me because, yes, what Kate said is totally true. What's uncomfortable today might be comfortable in 3 months, but also what's comfortable today might be horribly uncomfortable in 3 months. And that's okay too.
Yes.
And I told Erin in the
Absolutely.
pre-chat that we were talking about grief, or we were talking about death of expectation, or we were talking about, shifting of identity. And so many times it's because something has begun to erode, to atrophy, to out where it's welcome in me, to feel disingenuous to me, even though well-intentioned. You get to outgrow stuff, right?
Yes.
So yeah, what's uncomfortable very often becomes comfortable. Let's celebrate and embrace that. Let's also celebrate and embrace the courage that it takes to be like, I don't like this anymore, which I'm hearing from more and more entrepreneurs, including
Mhm.
you. You are very deeply entrenched in coaching and you're still seeing some private coaching clients, but you're also looking out other revenue streams. You're a freaking doctor, right? So like go be in academia, go write things, go write papers, go be a scientist, go explore. But instead of doing that, we go, well, I guess I'll just commit to what seems courageous, which what seems courageous to me is playing the fiddle on the Titanic because I bought the ticket. And it's like, you're allowed to not want to be somewhere. You're allowed to leave the Titanic if you want to. And you're allowed to, on the way out of there on the lifeboat, be like, by the way, this sucks.
Mm-hmm.
That's courageous too, to be like, hey, bye, owning it, leaving,
Absolutely. And then the messaging we get is that the courageous thing is to tough it out when times get tough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
You keep
quitting,
going.
yeah, I was gonna say, quitting can be one of the most courageous things you ever do.
Oh, hell yeah. So I called
Yeah.
this session Finding Courage in Bonkers Times, and they are. But I think specifically, how do we find courage or recalibrate with courage or whatever the proper verb for courage is? How do we courage in periods of transition and uncertainty specifically? How do we courage when we literally don't know the landscape of tomorrow?
Yeah. So the first thing I can think of is recognize the courage the courage it takes to let yourself be in transition. People don't leave the Titanic, right? It feels scary. This is whether it's leaving a job or whether you've been in a certain business for a while and your identity is wrapped up in a particular thing. The courage to say, I'm going to do something different, or the courage to sit in the uncertainty of, I don't know. Recognize where you're already being courageous. Because again, we have it in our heads that courage looks a specific way, and we're not recognizing the ways we're already there. Give yourself some credit. And then from there, it's not about these big, grand, sweeping gestures.
Yep.
So I talk a lot about how to do these really tiny things to build up what I call my joy tank, right? I think of the joy tank, not like the gas tank where you go drive in at 0 miles and refill it and then do it again. But the joy tank is this thing that you're kind of always keeping full.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the elements to add to the joy tank is these tiny acts of courage. And I mean tiny. No grand script. It's not, I'm going to go out to the protest tomorrow. It's like, what's the tiny act of courage? The tiny act of courage might be sending a text to somebody that you're not sure if they'll respond, right? A tiny act of courage could be, I'm trying to think of what tiny act of courage. I had a tiny act of courage. I was coaching 2 people in the federal government today, and there's a lot there.
I mean, showing up for work in the federal government is a titanic act of courage today.
Yeah. It's an amazing thing that I'm doing to serve in these bonker times. But my tiny act of courage was telling them both, they're very different leaders. They work in tandem, that they're both people pleasing. Just to say, you're both people pleasers. They're like, that's a tiny act, right? And to say it very firmly, not, I think you might be people pleasers. It's like, no, you're people pleaser.
You're a people pleaser. You don't people please the delivery of people pleasing.
But I don't know these people very well. They got sort of assigned to me as a coach. It's not like they, went through the Rolodex of coaches in the world and went, Erin. So it could have gone badly. But I also had the courage in that moment. So tiny moment, right?
I love that so much, because you'll say the same thing about joy. And spoiler, Erin will be back tomorrow to break down their revolutionary approach to joy, which again, spoiler, has a lot to do with curation of tiny moments of which lead to a larger tank and more discovery of. And whether you're woo, whether you're energetic, we know that what we focus on expands, right? What we look for, we see. And I think those 2 things, both courage and joy, those tiny moments, are really such gorgeous gateways betwixt those 2 things. And it is those tiny moments of joy, those tiny moments of courage. You know what? I am going to raise my voice. You know what? I am going to say something. I am going to be like, actually, this. I am going to push back when my boundaries are violated just a little bit. Or, Jen Koken comes to mind. She'll be up here later talking about how imposter syndrome is your superpower. But Jen sent food back to the kitchen in a way that I think was totally courageous. And that's why you said, like, what does courage look like to you? She didn't people please, but she also wasn't a dick. She was just like, hey, just so you know, this isn't what I ordered, and I would appreciate a new meal.
Awesome.
And I was sitting across the table from her being like, that's the most baller act of courage I've ever seen, because I've only seen it done 2 other ways. They brought me the wrong meal, but I'll eat it anyway, which is what I would do. No judgment, but that's what I would do. Or, what the fuck? They brought me the wrong meal. Boom, shakalaka, shakalaka, shakalaka. I'm going to make this a thing. I'm going on Yelp. I'm going on Google. You could have killed me. Da da da. I'm not talking about food allergies. I'm just talking about drama queens and Karens. Okay. Like, and Ben was just like, hey, listen, this isn't what I ordered. And to show up without emotion, but also hold your boundary, was so gorgeously courageous. And yeah, Seth's like worried about spitting the food. I really don't think anybody spit in Jen's food, because they're probably just like, oh, there's a fact at play here. That is not what she ordered.
Yeah.
Let me solve this factual problem. And meanwhile, I sat there, Jen stayed non-emotional, and she could have been Joan of Arc to me. I was just like,
and going back to that, may not have been a thing that she would have marked as courage, because that may be just her normal way of interacting, right? I do want to just talk, somebody just brought up joy. Courage is a fundamental ingredient of joy. We cannot experience joy without having these moments of courage. And people look at me funny, like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, if you imagine a world where everything you set out to do, you get it. So you imagine a world where you never get uncomfortable, you never push. That's boring as fuck, right? So we do need courage to experience joy, but not the courage that's the kind where we're gritting through because someone told us we need to be courageous, right?
Yeah.
That is a destroyer of joy. But that courage that we're talking about today, those tiny moments of showing up for yourself, of moving through a fear you want to move through because it's important to you, that makes space for joy. And it doesn't necessarily feel joyful in the moment. I'm going to be the first one to say, but afterwards, the satisfaction, the joy that comes from going, wow, I did that.
Yes.
Amazing.
I mean, say what you will about Tony Robbins, love him, hate him, be indifferent, but when he got, and I'm sure he wasn't the first, got everybody to walk on those hot coals, it was the most brilliant marketing thing that he could ever do
Yep.
because he got people immediately after on video going, I did that. And
Yep.
I did that is I showed courage. That's what
Yep.
I did that means is look what I did, not in a way that's look at me arrogance, but is in look at who I am, look at what I can accomplish, look at how capable I am of facing the future. And when you know that you're capable of facing the future, you don't go back to bed, you go out and face it, unless you need rest, which is not what we're talking about.
Or you need the courage to rest and go, look, I did that. I laid on the floor.
All right, so we talked about some big courages today. Courage to rest, courage to joy, courage to stop, courage to let something go. Courage to what? What else have we talked about today?
Courage to find what's you.
Yeah. And courage to own that.
Yeah.
Raw, real, and just a little dangerous. This is Feral.